when you have to fill 8 spots on a roster, not every transfer is going to be a flashy name or a guy that you think, oh, this is a guaranteed starter, right? You're going to need to get some guys that are going to be more role players. And maybe that's the role that Jayden Dawson has. I guess we'll find out, obviously, as this roster continues to take shape. Pay heed, all who enter, and beware this podcast. That's right. This is the Paid Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer, along with Kevin Flaherty. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible. Member FDIC. And today we have more breaking news as we record on Saturday afternoon. And it's positive breaking news. It's good breaking news. It is not players departing, partly because there's nobody left to depart from this Kansas basketball program, but instead, Kansas has landed 2 commits on Friday afternoon. They got the commitment of Jayden Dawson from Loyola Chicago. And then on Saturday afternoon, as we record, they got the commitment of Tre White out of Illinois. So we're going to be talking about those 2 additions to the Kansas roster ahead for 2025. Also got a little bit of football we're going to sprinkle in at the end of this episode. Today, Saturday, was Fan Appreciation Day out on campus with some fans getting a chance to go out and see the team a little bit for the football side. Lance Leipold had a chance to speak with some of the media, so we've got some audio from that. That'll be coming up later on in the show. So a little bit of a combo episode here with some football stuff from spring football at the end of it. But of course, the major news out of today is that Kansas is back, Kevin. Kansas is back. The Jayhawks have landed 2 commitments, as I just outlined, on Friday afternoon and then on Saturday afternoon as we record, with Jayden Dawson from Loyola Chicago and Tre White. We'll start with Jayden Dawson since he was the first guy to commit on Friday afternoon. This one kind of came out of the blue a little bit. This was not one necessarily a lot of people had on their radar. And it gave me the sense that they are not operating fully transparently right now. What I mean by that is they are not being very open about potential players that they are looking into and going after, and probably for good reason, right? Maybe there's guys that they don't want other programs on the scent. They don't want to have a situation where guys get the price driven up a little bit, because I think we've already kind of seen that happen maybe with a guy like Josh Dix, who ended up committing to Creighton, by the way. So you can scratch him off your big board. But Kansas kind of moving a little bit in the shadows, so to speak, and they land Jayden Dawson sort of out of left field. He is a 6'4" guard out of Loyola Chicago. Kevin, first off, just your initial reactions to Dawson from what you've seen from him, and how do you expect he might fit in with this Kansas roster?
Yeah, I like Dawson a lot. I think, it was funny after he committed, and of course now he's actually signed. I talked to a friend of the show, Isaac Trotter, over at CBS Sports, and Isaac actually made the comparison to Curtis Jones at Iowa State. And obviously, Nick, I think if anybody were to say to you, hey, you can add Curtis Jones to your team, you would say, yes, please, and where do I sign up?
You mean the Big 12 6th man of the year?
Yeah, exactly. That guy. Yeah. And there are some similarities. They're both sort of thickly built guys where that allows them to maybe play with some strength, on both ends a little bit. You see a lot of movement off of Dawson when he's really tough to defend as a shooter. There are some guys that they're shooters and they're almost exclusively catch and shoot guys, and they're dependent on other people to create their shots. And I know some people, Nick, will look at the percentages and say, he didn't quite make 37% of his threes this year. He was in the 36s. I would urge you to watch the tape, because I think some of that is, hey, this is a guy that took the highest percentage of shots on his team when he was on the court. And so it was not unusual for him to come down, crossover and take a 25-footer fairly early in the shot clock. And I don't think that that's something that I would worry about, because I can already hear people being like, oh my gosh, that sounds like the type of guy that Bill Self isn't going to like. I think he's going to get more efficient shots at Kansas, and he's not going to have to play with the ball in his hand in those circumstances. This is a guy, Nick, that shot 50% from one corner, shot 48% from the other corner. You know what gets you open corner shots? A point guard like Darren Peterson driving into the lane. And so when you look at that, when you look at the shots that he gets off of dribble handoffs, which of course Kansas does quite a bit, this seems like a really good scheme fit And Nick, I mean, I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but how many shows have we talked about, like, hey, don't worry about landing the number 3 guy in the transfer portal. Get a guy that fits what you do, that fits what you want from that guy. And honestly, that was one of my takeaways from Dawson was this is a guy that fits. He's somebody that excels in things that Kansas is going to want him to do at Kansas.
Yeah, I agree. And he's somebody that can play defense as well. He's a defender also. He was second team All Atlantic 10 this year. He was Loyola Chicago's leading scorer, originally from Omaha as well. And you said he took a lot of shots, took a lot of threes this season, shot 36%, which is honestly, that would have been one of the better shooters on this Kansas roster from passing. So that's not exactly a bad thing at all. And with Loyola Chicago, he was playing into April. Loyola Chicago was in the NIT, made it to the semifinals, had a game on April 1st just this past week. And this is what Dawson was doing in the NIT down the stretch. He scored 35, a career high against San Francisco in a game in which he made 4 threes. Then he dropped 13 against Kent State, and then against Chattanooga in the semifinal, which Loyola Chicago ended up losing, he scored 19. So in his last 3 games,
11 threes in each of those 3 games, by the way. 33 3-point attempts over a 3-game stretch. I got to respect it, honestly. Like, he knows how his bread is buttered.
Yeah, and he finished the year really strong. You look at the last games he did in the regular season, he had 16 points, 14 points, 17 points, 17 points. So he really finished the season strong down the stretch. He's bouncy a little bit. I know there's been a highlight going around of him with that vicious one-hand dunk he had in a game as well. So, yeah, he's a player that I think, to your point, Kevin, feels like more of a scheme fit, right? Which is kind of what we've been asking for on the show. Like, hey, don't be, sucked in by the guy that averaged 19 points per game or whatever and think, we'll just make it work, whatever. He scored a lot of points at his previous place. He must be good. Versus a guy like this, who I think makes a little bit more sense. And the other thing I'll mention with this is when you have to fill 8 spots on a roster, not every transfer is going to be a flashy name or a guy that you think, this is a guaranteed starter, right? You're going to need to get some guys that are going to be more role players. And maybe that's the role that Jayden Dawson has. I guess we'll find out, obviously, as this roster continues to take shape. But you're not going to get a bunch of flashy names if you need to basically get a brand new roster, right? So if you're sitting there thinking, man, I didn't watch any of Loyola Chicago, which I don't blame you if you didn't, so I don't know anything about this guy, that's not a bad thing, right? Like that, like just because it's not a name you recognize does not mean it's not a player that the Kansas could find useful. And I think it actually could be the opposite. I think it could be, again, this guy fits better with what Kansas maybe wants to do and how the system that Bill Self wants to run. And if that's the case, that's an A+ commitment in my book, because we've seen Kansas go out and try to just find the best players available or throw money at maybe some of the best guys that they think could work, smash them together, and it hasn't paid off. So I really actually do like this pickup a lot, because it feels like a guy that is going to bring that mentality that Kansas probably needs, and is somebody who can do some things as well on both the offensive end and the defensive end, which is great to see. So overall, I like this one a lot. I think this is a solid start. This was a solid start for Kansas on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. And when you're building a roster, to your point, it's not like building a roster in a video game where it's like, hey, I want to get this 82 rated guy because he's better than a 79 guy. You want guys who fill specific roles. And so at the end of the day, people were mad at KU last year when they didn't rebound super well. You know what helps that? A guy that rebounds. They were mad, when they didn't have a catch and shoot guy, to knock down it. And you don't necessarily need a 20-point a game guy, to your point, to be that guy. You need somebody who can be a catch and shoot guy. And so you're going to need to sort of fill in the blanks around it, and you're going to need to land role players. And I think, Dawson's a guy that I like the Curtis Jones comparison that Isaac made, not just because of play style, but because I think that's a role he could really excel in, as a guy that's sort of that next guy off the bench. And we've seen Bill Self sort of give those guys a little bit of freedom, right? Like when you look at Remy Martin, when you look at some of the instant offense guys that he's brought off the bench, Sharon Collins on the national title team in '08 was an off the bench, instant offense type of guy. I think that, people are going to look at it and say, well, if this guy's the starting 2 guard or starting 3 guard, I don't know how much I love it. I think he's a starting caliber guy, Nick, and I wouldn't be upset if he started, but I really think that sixth man sort of offensive role off the bench, he could be really, really good in that role and could be the sort of guy that could swing some games KU's way this year.
One thing to point out, this particular season in this last year for Loyola Chicago, they didn't really play many high major competition. You look at their schedule, they played VCU. Against VCU, Dawson had 10 points, was 1 of 6 from 3, 2 of 10 from the floor. They played Tulsa. He had 15 points in that game. They didn't really play a lot of high major competition. So I guess you could look at that as maybe a potential negative if you don't really know how that's going to translate to the Big 12 level. But other than that, I do, like I said, I think this was a solid start for Kansas, right? And when you are trying to build a roster, like you just mentioned, Kevin, you got to start somewhere. And I don't think this was a bad start at all for Kansas on Friday afternoon. And they carried that, by the way, into Saturday. As we record, we're going to talk about the next player that Kansas got. That's one Tre White. We'll take a quick break, though, first. And that gives us a chance to remind you that you should be shopping at Home Field Apparel. Use that promo code PAY24 for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. They've got fantastic gear from 140 plus schools, including Kansas. Obviously, you've seen it. You've seen us rocking it. They've got fantastic KU gear that you'll definitely want to get your hands on for the summer. It's clean, it's comfortable, it'll keep you cool as well. The t-shirts, but also with the weather as it is, you may still need to get the jacket or some sweatpants, and they got you covered there as well at homefieldapparel.com. And again, use that promo code PAY24 for 15% off your first order for some of the best college gear you'll find around. And if you just look around, you'll see a lot of people wearing it, including us here on the show. So, it's good quality stuff. We're going to be talking about Tre White coming up next.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Are you ready to win real money this March? Struggling to choose which team will pull off an upset? Well, forget all about the teams. All you need to focus on are player stats to rack up big cash prizes with DraftKings Pick 6. And when it comes to massive payouts, DraftKings dunks all over the competition. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. You can track your picks for a shot to win huge cash prizes, and it's really as simple as that, folks. You can turn your basketball knowledge into cash today. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly with just a $5 entry. Here's what you got to do. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
This is the Paid Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer here with Kevin Flaherty. If you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe on our audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, and on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN. We're approaching 675 subscribers. Thank you so much to all of you that have already done so and subscribed. And again, if you haven't, you'll definitely want to, because the news is probably going to keep rolling in and you'll want to stay up to date with us here on the show. You can turn on the notification bell so you know when we are posting new episodes and new shows to stay up to date with the latest in the transfer portal. And we're talking plenty of KU football spring stuff as well as that rolls on. So we've been doing some football position breakdowns. If you missed any of those, you can check those out. We're going to be continuing to put those out also through the remainder of the spring. So lots of great content coming your way over the coming weeks and months into the off season as well. So definitely want to stay tuned in, and you can do that by staying subscribed. And also feel free to drop a comment on our YouTube channel or leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple and Spotify to share your thoughts, share how you're feeling, what you're thinking surrounding KU right now. So tons of ways to stay in contact with the show and make your voice heard as well. We love to hear from you guys as well. So Kansas on Friday afternoon gets Jayden Dawson from Loyola Chicago, and the good news keeps coming for the Jayhawks. As on Saturday, as we record, they get another commitment from one Tre White, and this was a player that we highlighted on a previous show as somebody to possibly keep an eye on, and sure enough, he commits to the Jayhawks. Funnily enough, Kevin, this is not the first time Tre White's been committed to Kansas. He actually was committed during high school for a brief period of time to KU before ultimately ending up at Louisville, where he actually started his career. Or, excuse me, he actually started his career at USC. Yeah.
Sorry. Louisville to Illinois. Yeah.
And in this era of college athletics, sometimes it's tough to keep track of where guys have been. But yeah, he actually started his career.
How many people remember that AJ Storr was at St. John's at one point?
Exactly. Tre White actually started his career at USC. He was he was all freshman team in the Pac-12. Real throwback there, Pac-12.
Oh man,
back in 2022. Then he did go to Louisville. Where he started 26 games for them in the 2023-24 season, averaged 12 points per game. And this past season, he was at Illinois, in which he started 28 games, averaged 10.8 points per game, 5.5 rebounds. He was fairly efficient, shot 50% from the floor as well. And he's a guy that, like we touched on in our previous show when talking about him, Kevin, not necessarily a guy that was a volume 3-point shooter at 6'7", and typically was playing more of the 4 position with Illinois. And I think that's probably the position you want to see him play at Kansas as well, at that 4 spot as sort of that stretch 4 type of player. He shot 73s this past season for Illinois in 32, 33 games, something like that. So you're talking about around 2 threes per game, basically, for White, which is not bad at all if he's going to be playing. So that's that 4 position for you. Also, so he is originally from, funnily enough, Kevin, I don't know if you caught this. Do you know where Mr. White happened to play his high school ball?
No, where at?
At a little place called Prolific Prep, a.k.a. Where Darren Peterson is playing right now also. So you have to think that connection maybe helped a little bit as well for Kansas. So he comes over to KU, and this is another player, Kevin, that I think makes sense from a fit standpoint for Kansas, right? He's a guy that, again, if you want to play him at the 4, he has shown that he's capable of shooting the 3, which, like we talked about before, when you have a player that you're trying to stretch the floor with at that 4 spot, he doesn't necessarily need to be a high volume 3-point shooter, but if he can be a threat, that's better than nothing, which unfortunately nothing is kind of what Kansas has had the past couple of years with KJ Adams, who did not attempt a single 3 his entire season this past year. So that's something to keep in mind, but feels like another guy that can play strong defense and has a chance to potentially fit in well. Not a real huge splashy name, but a guy that from a system standpoint, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, a guy who averaged better than 10 points a game at each of his last 2 power conference spots and just missed that mark at USC. He almost did it in 3 different leagues in 3 years. And so if somebody would have said to you, hey, you're going to get a 10 and 5 from this guy, that's basically who he is right now. I don't think you'd argue with that, Nick. And I think, he's a better defensive rebounder, I believe, than KJ Adams was. Gives you more floor stretch, certainly, than KJ Adams did. He's not the overwhelming defender that KJ Adams could be, where KJ was really a lockdown guy. But he's good on that end. And I think the other thing that maybe doesn't show up in the stats, but if you watch him, is he's a really good cutter off the ball. And if you're looking at us talking about guys filling roles and trying to fill in sort of the picture around Darren Peterson, you're going to want a big guy that is going to be able to run pick and roll with him and and be able to get above the rim, catch some stuff, finish some stuff around the rim. You're going to want an outside shooter, who's going to be able to space the floor, that's going to be able to knock down shots when the defense collapses. And you're going to want somebody who cuts well, that can kind of fit into openings and provide another option, cutting to the basket. And White brings that part of it. If you look at Dawson being the floor stretching guy, White doing this, and that's not even saying that all these guys are going to start, but they are all going to play alongside Darren Peterson at some point. And so I do think he fills that role really well. I think there's a lot to like about this one. To your point, like he's not a guy that everybody's going to say, hey, this is a top 20 transfer in college basketball. Man, this guy is going to be a star. But I also think there's maybe even a little bit of upside here, Nick, in that, typically when you project guys to the next level, you don't just look at their 3-point shot, you look at their free throws. And a lot of times that tells you, hey, does he have good form? Is it something that you could continue to stretch out? This year was career highs for Tre White, both as a 3-point shooter, shooting, I think, 32, 33%, right about 33, I think. And then, but from the free throw line, shot 82%, which is excellent, obviously. So could it be that, hey, this is a guy that could make 34, 35%? Yeah, for sure. And to your point, it's not like they're going to ask him to shoot 35% over 5 threes a game. And so with him being a guy that can just make somebody pay, by standing out there where defenses have to respect him, have to pull an extra guy out of the paint, I do think that this is a pretty solid fit, Nate.
And also what you said about the free throw shooting, he got to the line a decent amount, which is something that obviously this Kansas team, particularly this season, struggled with. And when you talk about cutting, the first thing that comes to my mind is Kevin McCullough. Kevin McCullough did a phenomenal job as a cutter so many times when he was at Kansas. And I'm not saying Tre White's going to be like at that level, but that was my first vision is with the Bill Self style. If you have a guy that can cut well, it can lead to a lot of easy baskets. I mean, go back and rewatch that Houston game that Kansas won with Kevin McCullough back in 2023. Kansas got so many easy baskets against what was at that point, if you looked at like KenPom numbers, was like one of the greatest defenses of all time in Houston. And Kansas got so many easy baskets because of the cutting ability of Kevin McCullough in that particular game. And so you think about having a player that is able to do something similar to that, maybe not at that level, but that really excites me because that's something that I think Bill Self is going to want to utilize. And if you have a player that can do that reliably, that's a big positive. And I think that's what Tre White can bring a little bit as well this season. You look at what he did this past season in 2024. He had a 23-point outing against Wisconsin in December. Down the stretch, he finished the season with four consecutive games, 14 points or more. Also had 22 points in the conference tournament against Iowa. Wasn't very effective in the NCAA tournament for Illinois. Against Xavier, he was just 3 of 5 from the floor, scored 7 points. Against Kentucky in that round of 32 loss for them, he was 4 of 9 from the floor, scored 8 points. But he did have 7 rebounds in both those games as well. And also, he's generally not a guy that's going to turn the ball over a lot, which is good as well. He's generally takes decent care of the basketball. He's not necessarily somebody
a bunch in general, Nick. Like that's one of the major differences, I think, because when people look at like a small ball 4 like this, I think they want to look at how he compares to KJ Adams. And one of the things that was a major strength for KJ Adams is him being able to handle the ball on the short roll. Right, he was a really good passer. He was a guy that could handle the ball fairly well. Tre White is not necessarily going to give you that part of it. He's going to give you more shooting, more spacing, but he's not necessarily going to be a guy handling the ball on the short roll, making reads, making difficult passes the way that KJ Adams was able to.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that. He didn't turn the ball over a lot, but he also didn't have very many assists. So he's not going to be as much of a passing threat and / ball handling threat, like you mentioned, as KJ Adams was, which there were some games, Kevin, where KJ Adams sometimes was like, hey, this is the guy we need to bring the ball up the floor. Like he's the best option to bring the ball up the floor in some cases. So that's something to consider as well. But that's not going to be Tre White. That's not going to be Tre White. He only had 25 assists on the year, so less than an assist per game. So he's definitely not going to be the same level of passing threat that KJ Adams was. And again, as you said, somebody that you're probably not going to be utilizing too much in like that short roll situation because he's not much of that passing threat type of player. But overall, again, I think if I had to guess, I would expect, it's so difficult to project because we're talking about a roster that still has obviously so many holes in it that needs to be filled. But if I had to guess right now, I would say Tre White is a guy that you could look at and say, this could be your starting four-man potentially in 2025. Whereas you look at Dawson, who is probably going to be more of a rotational guard, I would say. I don't know that I would necessarily pencil him in as a starter at this stage, but certainly he's going to have a role. I think White's the guy that you would look at and say, hey, this is somebody that has a higher likelihood of potentially being the starter for this roster going forward. But obviously still lots of movement to come in the transfer portal and many more players that Kansas is going to have to sign because, as we talked about, they had 8 open spots. Now you can knock that down to 6 with these 2 commitments. So you still need to find literally an entire starting lineup at this point. I mean, obviously you have Darren Peterson, but you still need to find so many more players as well. One quick note also I wanted to mention is we talked about Floyd Badunga and sort of his situation. I don't know that Kansas is still entirely off the table in terms of him coming back. We'll see how it plays out. He's got a couple schools I think that are interested in him, but that's still I think is one to possibly keep an eye on one way or the other. We'll see how that plays out. But for Kansas, they still need to be able to pivot in case Flory does indeed not return, which I would say is still probably more likely at this point, but that's just kind of my gut feeling, I guess. Beyond that, but we'll see how that plays out. But any other final thoughts here on Tre White, Kevin?
No, to your point, I think Kansas fans heading into Friday were kind of, I don't want to say in panic mode, but kind of like, oh my gosh, when is this going to get better? If for whatever reason Kansas is able to get Flory back in the fold along with, White and Dawson, I think all of a sudden Kansas fans would be like, oh, this is a very different picture than the one I was looking at just a few days ago. It would not surprise me, Nick, to see Flory's announcement one way or another coming up fairly soon based on what I'm hearing. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you in that I don't know that Kansas is necessarily the favorite to retain Flory, but I do think that they're absolutely not out of it at this point. And if they were to pick Kansas, he and his Guardians, I would not be shocked, I guess would maybe be the way to put that.
Yeah, KU absolutely needed some positive momentum of some kind. I think with just sort of from like a PR standpoint, I guess. Basically, you lose literally your entire team in the span of 5-6 days over the past week, and you want something to make yourself feel a little bit better. And I think from the outside, again, getting a couple guys just into the fold makes you feel a lot better about where this program is starting to go over the course of the next basically months to 6 weeks of trying to piece together this roster for 2025. So, by the way, unfortunately, Darren Peterson's his high school season's over. They lost in their national tournament. So, we'll see what happens with that. But his high school season is officially over. So he will be certainly getting to join KU soon in the summer, and we'll go from there. So definitely still very exciting times for Kansas on that front. What do you say we take a quick break and then we'll get into a little bit of KU football? As I said, it was Fan Appreciation Day today on Saturday for KU football. We were out there. We'll touch on that a little bit and have a chance to hear from Lance Leipold. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
This is the Paid Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer alongside Kevin Flaherty. Some great discussion there breaking down Kansas's latest transfer portal commits on the basketball front. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit of football real quickly here, as it was Fan Appreciation Day for Kansas out at the indoor practice facility. This was supposed to be, I think, a sort of a bigger event. Kansas had some plans for it outside at the outdoor practice football fields next to where they're in the process of building the new booth. But if you're in the Lawrence, Kansas City area, you would know that the weather decided not to cooperate. I woke up to a wind chill of under 30 degrees this morning after it being in the 70s and in previous weeks. So it was kind of moved inside, turned into a little bit more of a truncated event. But there was a fantastic turnout, I think, from Kansas fans. So if you were there, shout out to you. It ended up being a pretty cool event. Got to see a decent amount of practice from Kansas. We got to see a little bit of sort of red zone work from Kansas. They did some different drills. It was a pretty cool event. Lance Leipold gave some words to the fans, which was nice as well. Did you have any takeaways, Kevin, real quick, and then we'll get to what Lance Leipold had to say?
The fans were appreciated. No, it was a fun deal. I thought, and kudos to KU for finding a way to adjust. Obviously, with there being no spring showcase this year, I think this was sort of the event for fans to come out and see a team that has a lot of new moving pieces and kind of see some of the new guys and what that looks like. It wasn't ideal for it to get moved inside, but Nick, it was a great crowd, and those fans had to wait through the cold, through the wind, just to be able to get in. And 20 minutes prior, certainly probably earlier than that, fans were lined up, and it was a very good crowd and a very enthusiastic one as well.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the fans that showed out because of the weather and because of kind of the schedule change of it all as well, right? But KU fans showed out, and I think you can tell that the excitement for this football team is certainly there right now, and it continues to grow because this is a team that I think in a lot of ways is going to be, you think about last year and it was sort of this, one final ride, all these seniors, right? Devin Neal, all these, Kobe Bryant, all these great players. I think this year it's the excitement level is similar, but in a sense of, hey, there's a lot of new guys that we can learn about and start to get excited for. And I think that was part of it as well. So it was really cool to see. Lance Leipold did also speak with us, speak with the media after the event. Let's get to that. Here's everything that Lance Leipold had to say.
Coach, how are you assessing the spring so far after this fan event?
You come out of these things sometimes and you're trying to figure out which side of the ball, if somebody has a good day, is the other side really struggling or where it's at? But I've been extremely pleased with the attitude, the effort, the work ethic of this team, embracing what we're setting as standards. Got a lot of work to do yet. We got a lot to clean up in some things in critical times, but 12 practices in, I'm very pleased where we're at.
How difficult is it with all these new faces trying to get everyone synced?
It's been unique. I really got to thank our staff and commend them for the job they've done. I think not only just what the guys have done on the field, but how they fit into the locker room. A lot of times guys go into the portal and transfer for different reasons. Probably most frequently is a new opportunity to play a little more. And these guys have come in and understood that opportunity is here, but at the same time they have to earn it by working hard and doing things. And they've been able to do that. We see guys that are going to contribute, and I think they fit in very nicely.
Do you like the way the offensive coordinator and the offense is right into the defense under new coordinators?
Yeah, Jim Zabrowski's done a nice job. I think the input that he has, Matt Lubick, who had been with us before in an analyst role, and I think they're working extremely well together, as well the other offensive assistants. I like what we're doing and our continuity and identity of what we want to be. Still where who and what is going to be all those playmakers will still be determined through camp. I think DK McDonald's done a great job on the defensive side, really establishing a standard of play and physicality of what we want to be and holding our guys to that standard each and every day of how we're going to go about and attack the field. And again, the changes that we've made a little in schematics, I think the guys have picked up well. And again, it's only 12 practices, and we're going to need everyone as we head into that opener against Fresno.
Canada said the defensive line has a chance to be the engine of this team. What have you seen?
Yeah, I think the way, especially when you have two defensive line coaches, Jim's talking mainly his position, probably at D tackle, because there's experienced guys there, and when you've had four guys that have played some football for us, and the way they've played has been exciting, and it should be. I always say, probably the positions we talk about the least sometimes are offensive and defensive line, but that's where you win games and championships.
There's a lot of coaching going on right now. Coaches being the leaders in different rooms, but who do you see emerge as leaders so far?
Yeah, that's one of those things when, there's some similarities like when we first got here where coaches got to do a lot of the leading until we get those things that are established. Again, a lot of the new guys come in here are just trying to figure out routine and expectations. Hard for them to be leaders, but there's some guys emerging. I think Taylor Davis is taking a step in the back end of the secondary. Bryce Foster. Kobe Baines has really tried to to put himself out there a little bit more. Deshaun Hanukkah, with his maturity and everything that he's battled, he's a guy that we rely on there. Daniel Highshaw's stepped up, and some of these guys, they haven't really been comfortable in some of those roles, and it's great to see them do that. Jalen's really hasn't done a whole lot this spring, but Cole Ballard, as we've talked many times before, has great leadership qualities and has that charisma that instantly gives guys in the locker room that kind of respect from when he speaks. So I think we're pretty good there. We mentioned the defensive tackles before. I think DJ Withers is one of those guys. Dean Miller missed some time with illness, but he's worked hard there. We're going to continue to work on, Bengali Kamara is probably one that's going to need to step up vocally for us at that second level position.
And how are you guys preparing for potential roster cap numbers at 105 with the NCAA settlement on that?
Yeah, I know Chris has talked about it over in Manhattan, and we're still looking for that direction as we're getting closer and closer with everything being settled. What are the parameters of this? And you want to give yourself the best opportunity to have 105 bodies to start the season, at the same time making sure that you're being honest with the young men and where their futures may lie. Our guys going to want their degree from the University of Kansas, and that's no matter what happens, or our guys going to look for other opportunities. We did have some leave that semester, and we did have a couple walk-ons that got scholarships places after leaving, and with this coming down the road, and we understood that, and we tried to help and aid them in that. But it's not what we'd really like, and I think it's been said, if we could have gradually cut this down, I think it would have been easier to phase in, because we got a lot of guys that pay their own way, work extremely hard, and love the game of football and love being in Lawrence, Kansas.
And where are you guys at number-wise with the roster right now?
With the newcomers that we have slotted come in, I think we're going to be just slightly over 110 right now is where it's at. So, and again, when we have another portal window, we have to kind of see where things are at. So that'll be something that we're going to sort through. And again, hoping to get that direction of where that's going to be. Are there going to be slots that you can fill based on injury? What will be that number that, right now we're being told that 105 is by the week or by first game. So what does that really entail? And again, I think everybody wants to stay competitively balanced and not be behind in some of these areas. So we'll have to kind of see what kind of precedent set.
It's about 2/3 of the spring done. Where are you guys at health-wise?
Probably not exactly where I'd like it to be. We lost more guys. We didn't go live today. We're a little bit more banged up at running back than I'd like right now. About 3-4 guys out. So, but I think we have a total about 8 out right now. So, it's probably par for what you normally go through. I haven't compared it to past years, but we also took a look. We're right on course for the amount of live snaps that we've done in this program in our previous springs, and probably have had more success in our thud periods than we have in previous years. So I feel good about that and what we're getting accomplished. And I hope that right now we can get everyone back here, even as we head down the road, other than the ones that have had surgery. Anybody else?
How's Jaylen coming along?
Jalen's coming along well. He's starting to throw more and do some things, moving around. He's getting anxious, I can tell. But I tell you what, unfortunately, we all know the road he's kind of gone through. He's done a great job of taking the mental reps and staying engaged and being encouraging and being the leader that he is. And everything will be on course when we hit summer workouts, and he'll be 100%.
That was Kansas head coach Lance Leipold speaking with the media after Fan Appreciation Day, speaking about Jayden Daniels and also sort of the state of this team as for KU football, spring practices are getting close to wrapping up. And then we'll get into the spring portal. Actually, there's already been some spring other teams around the country seeing football players start to enter the transfer portal for spring. We've talked about it. Kansas has a few spots available. Would be curious to see if KU is going to be looking at possibly adding in some players through that window as well. Also, so that'll be something to keep an eye on as well. Kevin, you got anything else to add for our good listeners here?
No, we're about 2/3 of the way through football practice, and I was glad that fans did get a chance to see the team, and we get a chance to see a little bit of every practice, not necessarily the most informative periods that we could learn a lot about. I will say this though, Nick, Lath Margin kicking the ball well.
Yeah. He made 3 field goals, including 2 pretty long field goals from what we saw out there today, which is really cool to see. I clocked one of them at a 48-yarder, and then he kicked another one that was well over 40, probably over 45 as well. That looked like it was going to be good from quite a ways. So that was a positive. Yeah.
Shout out Matt Moeller for having a touchdown catch too, and
Yeah.
it was pretty cool to see that because the offense kind of went nuts when it happened, and it's one of those exciting times of year where I think spring's starting to wind down. Team's still undefeated. You're starting to figure out though a little bit of, hey, who's emerging, who's maybe getting a chance to play with the ones, etc. And so it was a cool event. I really thought it was a nice chance for fans to get a little bit better picture of what this team looks like.
And you heard there at the end from Lance giving a little bit of an update on Jayden Daniels. He was out there for the portion that we got to see and the fans got to see. Didn't do much though, and he didn't take any snaps from what we saw during the sort of live period, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, the 11-on-11 period that we got to see. But sounds like everything's still on track. We've seen him out at practices previously, so that's a positive sign for Kansas as well as they progress through the spring. That's going to wrap it up, I think, for this episode on the Saturday afternoon. Enjoy the Final Four. We're recording this on Saturday afternoon, so if you're watching during the Final Four, enjoy that as that's getting underway tonight on Saturday, and then obviously the championship on Monday. And we're going to have plenty more updates, both from the KU basketball transfer portal and for KU football as well, with more position breakdowns. So be on the lookout for those. And the best way to do that is to subscribe. Subscribe on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN and our Apple and Spotify on the audio platforms to stay up to date on the latest and greatest happening with KU for news and analysis here on KCSN. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the show on this breaking news with 2 transfer commits for Kansas. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Kevin Flaherty, I'm Nick Springer. We will talk to you again, I'm sure, very soon. Until then, we'll talk to you later. See ya.